What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another Pound for Pound ATL. Here as of late, me and Toby have been taking some deep dives and looking into the offensive side of the ball, looking at some schemes and routes and, how certain players are going to be effective or used. And I need a little bit of a break from that. Need a little bit of a palate cleanser. So I figured I would take a look at some of those things on the defensive side of the ball. And something that caught my attention a little while back, hadn't really been able to put too much time into it because, like I said, the series that we had going on with the offensive side. What came to mind was the signing of Casey Heyward. I think in a lot of ways that it didn't go under the radar, but I don't think many people have put a lot of thought into it. At least I know maybe me and Toby haven't put a ton of thought into what that might mean. We acknowledged it as a great signing to pair with A.J. Terrell, very seasoned veteran, and to pair with an up and coming star. But I got to thinking about it more and more, and it really came down to the idea that we felt like Dean Pees was wanting to be more man-to-man in his coverages. I think I had made statements like that in the past, whether it was either in the early part of this offseason or even at certain times during the season last year, that he wasn't able to do what he wanted to do because of having to play more zone coverages than necessarily having to play, being able to play man coverages. And that got me to thinking, after we signed Hayward, who is, I'm going to throw up a interesting stat line. Casey Heyward is a zone guy. Like in Pittsburgh, he was a zone guy. And Las Vegas with the Raiders, he was definitely a zone guy. As you can see right there, 71% of his snaps came in zone coverage. Now, in zone coverage, he was really good, very good at as far as the PFF rankings goes. He only allowed a 53 quarterback rating. That's that NFL rating that you see at the very end there. Only 150 yards. So, in his zone coverage, he was very, locked down. And so it got me to thinking that if Dean Pees is really wanting to, be more man, why are they signing a predominantly zone corner? Now, spending time talking with guys like Damsky on those Twitter spaces, right now he's like my defensive aficionado that I consult with from time to time, as I am still I'm more of an offensive guy, but we don't want to be just one-sided. We're trying to be a well-rounded channel here. So with that being said, I'm always trying to learn. So as I kind of confirmed with Damsky, we ran a lot of cover 2 last year. And that's something that basically like Dean Pees isn't necessarily known for. He's known for more of the cover 1. And at least that's what it looked like on the surface. When I got to really digging into it, every stop that he's been at, the man and zone numbers are heavy zone. As far as when he was in Tennessee and even as far back as Baltimore. Now cover 1 is still a zone coverage. You still have your single high safety that's covering the deep middle of the field. Man, I really hope I'm saying that right. But when I looked at last year's numbers, I looked at Atlanta's man numbers, and you can see why. Obviously, they didn't retain Fabian Monroe. Wasn't very effective in man coverage, and you'll see here in a second wasn't super effective in zone. A.J. Terrell was good in man coverage. He was actually good in both. But that leads me to think, and I'm going to show a chart here in a minute, but that leads me to think why he was good. I don't know if he was like getting targeted a ton per se, because it seems like there were only 34 targets in man for A.J. Terrell. And then the zone coverage, he had, 28 targets in zone. And this is the part that makes me like not worry about A.J. Terrell, but worry about us like anointing him Terrell Island, so to speak, is he wasn't really getting targeted a ton because of effectiveness. The opposing defenses knew that they could go somewhere else with their matchups. Let's see, I'm trying to get the right deal here. There it is. Okay. So here's the right graph. This is from Sharp Football. As you can see there, this is the effective passer rate, passing against Atlanta's defense. And the middle part of the field, like where linebackers and safeties and stuff would be covering, like that was way more effective, way easier to hit. So they didn't really necessarily have to try the corners that much, because not only was the shallow part of the middle field open, but the deep middle was open. Safety play. So I think that's going to end up being far more important than what we may believe. That's going to be hoping that Richie Grant and Jalen Hawkins, if they end up being our starting safeties, really hope that they end up stepping up, because according to the data, according to the information, that's where Atlanta was getting eat up pretty well, is in the middle of the field, being linebackers and the deep safety. So that's what they're going to have to really lock down on. But kind of back to what I was showing you earlier with the amount of zone that Atlanta was playing. They predominantly played, cover two. You see that's where at the top of the charts there. They played cover two more than they did much of anything else. Cover two, cover three. And that one makes me wonder if it was more on the personnel that we had last year, which dictated this, or was it more to do with the lack of confidence that Dean Pees had in being able to open up his playbook? And what I mean by that is, a lot of y'all know that Dean Pees comes from that Bill Belichick, kind of coaching tree. Now, he didn't solely coach under Belichick, but he coached under Belichick, he coached under Saban. So just like we can, we bring to light that, Dave Ragone, Charles London, all those guys coached under Matt Nagy, who coached under Andy Reid. So you can't discount those West Coast tendencies in our offense. You're not going to be able to discount what the Patriots do, what Nick Saban does down in Alabama, because they all coach from like that similar philosophy, that similar mindset. And that led me down the rabbit hole of what's called pattern matching. Now, this is just an example of pattern matching, but it was an interesting thing to read about, and it may explain some of the zone numbers that you're seeing. Pattern matching uses like best of both worlds. It uses man principles and zone principles at the same time. It was something that Nick Saban and Bill Belichick came up with when they were coaching in Cleveland, trying to deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what pattern matching is, if you're not familiar with, because I had to get a little bit more familiar with it myself. I had heard the term, but I hadn't really dug into it. It really becomes like dictating on what the offense is doing to how the defense reacts. And you say, JR, well, duh, that's what defenses are. Yes, in a sense, like normally you, like in a cover two, cover three, like you have your area, your zone, and you react accordingly to who comes in your zone. Pattern matching is each defender is matched up on a particular player on the offensive side, and depending on what they do, how they release, dictates what the defense then does. Like, you have the way one of the articles that I read, which was really interesting in explaining it, you had your two corners, and then you're in like one step in, which could either be a safety or a nickel. They called them apex players. And then you had your hook and hook defenders. Your hook defenders tends to be more your linebackers. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to stick with the corners and a little bit of the apex player. But the corners, what their reaction is really dependent on what the receivers do. If the receiver releases deep, you may hear MOD, man over deep. So, if the receiver is pushing vertical, then the corner then basically goes man-to-man with him. And I think I said that man over deep part wrong. It's actually MEG, which is man everywhere goes. So you go with him. You travel with him. If he releases like that, it's just straight man-to-man. And it goes from the outside in, with the numbers, the 1, 2, and 3, and then on the other side of the field, 1, 2, and 3. What this allows the coaches to do is it allows them to do like split coverages. Like on one side of the field, if it's a 3x1, or then this particular diagram is a 2x1, like the guy who is there by himself, he can be playing a totally different coverage, not dictated on the other half of the field, not dictated on the strong side, where in a 3x1 set, the side that has the 3 receivers is the strong side of the formation. So the strong side of the formation could be running like a triangle coverage or a box coverage if there's a 3x1 and also the running backs on the same side. They could be running like a box type coverage, and then on the other side of the field, you could be having your corner over there, he knows he's by himself, so he's running a MEG, which is, man everywhere he goes. He just goes with his guy. I think this is what Dean Pees was talking about when he was talking about I'm not able to bust into all of my playbook yet. Before Dean Pees got here, we had Quinn. Quinn was under the philosophy of keep it simple and play fast. And he wanted his guys going 1,000 miles an hour, so he kept his coverage is simple so that his players could almost do this stuff off of instinct. Well, Dean is far more, complicated than that and far more complex than that. It was really, like I said, that article I read was really interesting when it called an inside player what we would call a nickel. He called him an apex player, and it really is kind of fitting to call him an apex player, because in Dean Pees' system, that nickel guy, that money guy, that robber, that whatever you want to like it's not a jackbacker, but the money backer, like that player is very crucial and is very vital. It was something that I pegged last year shortly after we hired Dean Pees. I got really intrigued by Logan Ryan, and then I got really intrigued by how I thought Isaiah Oliver could be that Logan Ryan. And lo and behold, that's what he was until he went down. And when he went down, it almost made Dean Pees' defense predictable. And it made to where the offenses were able to key in on who was playing that robber spot, who was playing that money spot or that apex spot on, depending on who was out there, whether it was Richie, whether it was Avery Williams, whether it was, whoever, that told them what they were doing. So I'm really hoping that getting Oliver back out there will be able to expand Dean's playbook to where he can really start adding in those sim pressures, those creepers that we talked about last year. He can really start dialing that stuff up, because that sim pressure really like messes with quarterback on what they're looking at and their reads that they're supposed to key in on. Because you can send Isaiah Oliver in on a blitz and drop D'Angelo Malone or whoever into the flats where he was just covering, and that can really like change how the quarterbacks look at and see what's going on post snap, pre snap. But I kind of went off on a tangent there. But the coverages that we're running, I think you're going to continue to see a lot more zone than I think a lot of people are thinking. I think a lot of folks feel like maybe that Dean Pees was hunting for a man corner so that he can do a lot more man coverages. But the players that he has as of right now, obviously if they cut Casey Heyward, I don't see them doing that. But if they decide to cut Casey Heyward, then maybe we have a different discussion. But right now, it looks like they're going to lean more heavily into that zone. And if you go back and look through the data, zone coverages, this league is a zone coverage heavy league. And it's done nothing but get more and more zone heavy as the years have gone on. And even as far back as Pease being in Baltimore, they ran a lot more zone than they did man. So it'll be interesting to see how the splits break out this year, but I fully expect it to be another zone-heavy year. Maybe not so much cover 2. We might get into more like cover 1 or more quarters or pattern matching. We might be able to have the guys who can fully do that pattern matching that I think Dean Pees is wanting to get into, is wanting to run, because then he can really mix up the coverages and mix up the looks, which is basically the same thing as motion on the offense. You disguise things. That's what you're trying to do. And I think ultimately that's why Dean Pees and Arthur Smith work well together. They're trying to disguise what they're doing to keep the other side guessing, and then they get to go at each other every day in practice, and I think that's going to do nothing but help sharpen both of their play calling and both of their outcomes. Well, that's what I got for you today. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. As always, y'all can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128. Toby D is at TobyD1991. We'll be back live on Tuesday. I know we've missed a live or so here, so we'll be back live on Tuesday. So y'all make sure you stop by, chat it up with us, so as we get closer and closer to training camp. If you want merch or Patreon, that stuff's in the links down below. If not, no big deal. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.